Welcome to the Venture Vault. I'm Michael Benatar, and today I have a great guest coming on the show, Carol Ann Wentworth. You are the founder and CEO of Wentworth Executive Recruiting, and I'm pumped to have you on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm excited to visit with you.
So I wanted to kind of dive in. How did you get into the recruiting space? And I know that you've built a few businesses in the past. Can you just tell me a little bit about your history through the businesses and how you got to the recruiting?
Sure. Well, I can honestly say it started in high school. I was a connector of people. I simply loved, hearing of a great story or a situation, a pizza place, and I'd say, "Oh, you got to hear about this." And
Yeah.
I would literally recruit groups of people to go. So that led me to when I got out of school and went up to school in Minnesota. I had actually attended one of my first Shackley rallies, which was health, nutrition, fitness
Mhm.
at the age of 19. And it was about recruiting people to nutrition and health. And I actually have a thing when I go to conferences, I've got to sit right in the front row so I can connect with the speaker energetically.
Yeah.
And it happened that on that day, there was Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Bob Holker, the gentleman I was there to see, um, Les Brown, all the greats, and Tony Robbins. They were all just starting their
Cool.
careers.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I got to meet that guy. So I met Bob Holker, number one guy in the world in Shackley, waited an hour to get his book, have him sign it. 6 months later, he called me to come out to his mansion in Minnetonka. And that actually began my recruiting career because
Oh,
I became his executive assistant. And literally, he recruited. There wasn't a day you didn't pick up the phone, you were telling somebody about a great product or sales, if you
yeah.
will, but it really was about educating them on that product. Well, from there, I fell in love with everything about professionally connecting people. And so then I launched my first startup at 25, which was an international modeling and talent agency,
Oh, great.
and out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, of all places. But I had been a talent, and I kept seeing these great faces, and I would send them to my agent. And I thought one day, gosh, I'm making her so much money. I
Yeah.
can do that. And so I literally wrote a program, set a very clear intention of where I wanted to be, and that was to work with Eileen Ford in New York City. And 6 months later, literally, there was a Midwest model search, 500 girls, 5 states, 5 finalists, and 3 of them were from my agency. And that
That's
put me
great.
on the map with Eileen Ford. So for 10 years, I recruited for her talent all over the Midwest, and we placed them all over the world. And it
It's
was, yeah,
No,
exciting.
it's interesting because I actually come from when I moved out to LA, I did commercial photography. So I worked with a lot of the modeling agencies out here. And I always find it so funny because most of the talent or the models, everybody just kind of was found. No one really set out to do it. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, like, when I was in high school, somebody told me to model and do this. And it always seems like the people that get into it just kind of fall into it. And you were the person finding all the talent. And it's funny too. It kind of blows my mind because it's like, yeah, I was walking in the mall and somebody just found me. And how were you finding talent back then? Were you just kind of just the same thing, just walking the malls and going to fairs and stuff like that and concerts?
Well, it was interesting, and I really like to differentiate how I'm different in the way I do recruiting today as I
Yeah.
did then, because I do a mindful approach. I've done this process for 40 some years, and it was about more than just that great face,
Yeah.
Michael. It really, to me, you had to have what I call the it factor. And so even today, when I look for the talent for my clients, there has to be something that stands out, but
Hmm.
more than not, it's the level of integrity, it's their attitude, it's how they deliver the
Hmm.
conversation, how they follow up.
Yeah.
And so I even had that concept back in those days. And that is actually one reason why Eileen Ford loved the people I found, because not only did they have the look, as you know from the being a photographer,
Yeah.
they had to be smart about what they did. In fact, if I represented them and sent them to Italy or Europe or wherever, they better be good
Yeah.
because I find out, and
Yeah.
that could ruin their career. So, it's an art. It really
Hmm.
is. I believe in the way you do search if you do it mindfully, because it's not about a dollar sign for me. At the end of the day, it's your career, it's your
Yeah.
livelihood. And so if I find out all the good things you want and need at this point in your life, and then what my client needs, and then if I can negotiate or make that marriage happen, I'm happy to say our retention is at 92%
That's
of
great.
everyone we place.
It's funny you say that because it was very much when I was shooting talent. A lot of times, if I was doing test shoots, that was when I was getting the newer models and shooting with them. And you could kind of tell who was going to make it just by their energy and their vibe and like how, excited they were. And some of the people that you would shoot with, you're like, oh, okay, like you don't really want to do this. You're not really loving the job. And it's crazy that you can tell that too, because it's very aware of like social interaction, right? You're very aware
Without,
of that, and I think that's interesting. And I didn't even think about that with jobs and recruiting, and you're just trying to find matchmaking. Basically, you're a
mm,
matchmaker for careers, and that's hard to do because I have a few businesses. I try to hire people, and I always find it a little difficult because sometimes people do great on the interviews or
yes,
or
yes.
virtually, and sometimes when they get to work it's like, what happened? Like, you're so good. How are you finding, or what is your process to kind of vet out that like you're really good at test taking but not good at like executing real life in a way, right? Because some people great at test but just can't do the real
Yeah.
world stuff.
No, excellent question too, Michael. I think what I have found from doing this work for, well, if I had to be honest, 40 years, but now I'm dating myself. The truth is I try to meet people where they're at
Hmm.
because to your point, there are great test takers, but
Yeah.
they may not be people, and
Yeah.
yet they might need to be a customer service representative for a software company.
Yeah.
And so what I actually have created some worksheets for everybody that I work with, and I have them fill it out. I have them really get clear with where they're at because I find that the way of applying for a job today is so different than the
Hmm.
way you and I did years ago.
Yeah.
It just is. And so if you were that candidate I was speaking with, I'd say, Michael, I have a couple worksheets I'd love to have you fill out. This is all about you. And
Hmm.
I won't even see them sometimes unless they want to share them. But I have them get very clear why they're moving, what's motivating them, what maybe they have a boss they don't get along with. They end up really opening up to me. So then I become more of a psychologist because
Yeah.
then I'll say, in that moment, is there something you can bring to the table that could shift that energy? Because you're right.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head in the beginning. It's all about energy.
Yeah.
And it really is. That's the connection and I've been able to help some people realize that maybe a position they're applying through with me is really not even what they wanted. They just
Yeah.
wanted a job and a paycheck.
Yeah.
I need people that want a career
Yeah.
and have a passion.
It's funny because I mean, listen, I guess I've never had like a real job. I worked in radio in high school, and then I came out here and kind of started my own business. And I've never really gone through the official interview process. And sometimes I hear my friends are like, "Oh yeah, I'm on the fifth or eighth interview."
Yeah.
And I always wonder for myself, like this is very selfish of me, but I'm like, what if in 3 years I sell my business and I want to go get a real job? I always wonder, can I actually go get a real job as being an entrepreneur? I've been an entrepreneur for the last, let's say, 15 years. And, my wife has a resume and she's been working at different jobs and she's able to like jump from here because she was director here. And I always wonder for, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this, podcast. And is that something companies are looking for? Because I always feel like I have done it all. I've done, the low level job to the high level job because I started the business. I had to do it all.
Yes.
And are
Yes.
companies looking for entrepreneurs like this? Because I always feel in a way almost like fake because I built it myself. And it comes off like, well, yeah, I did it all like I had to. There's no choice instead of being a
Yeah.
very specific talent for, say, an operations role. Like you've done operations and that's all you know. What have you found in kind of the workforce or companies? Are they looking for people like me at all? Or do they like them when they're very much like you're on this track and you're going for this career track to be, top VP at one of these companies? Um, yeah, I always wondered that. I'm curious.
Well, good question. And so today there's more flexibility
Hmm.
in this conversation. And so the traditional role was, yes, they like to look at people and their how they moved up the ladder on their
Yeah.
resume. What value can you bring in that vertical?
Hmm.
Now, what I have found, someone like you, if I was to work with you, I would find out all your very strong skill sets that you have that allowed you to build the companies you have.
Hmm.
If in the event it went into, let's say, a sales kind of role, I'd want
Yeah.
to know your numbers. Anyway, I would pull out every good thing about you and then frame it so they see you. And
Hmm.
so the companies that would welcome your kind of skill set really are startups. And I've
Yeah.
had it happen in Silicon Valley where I've actually helped different people, exactly like yourself, rebrand
Yeah.
and have that conversation. The other thing is to get on boards. There's different companies that are always looking for advisors
Yeah.
and, you know, coaches, if you will, on a board, new company startups, and uh, and they do pay.
Hmm.
It depends on the startup, of course, where you might
Yeah.
get equity. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, today there's a lot more
Yeah.
flexibility, definitely.
And because I was talking to my wife the other night. I always like want to set these goals, and one of my goals this year, I'm hopefully maybe going to sell one of my companies. And I always told her, like, I've never had a real job, a real, like, I go through the interview process and get hired. And, that was something where I don't know if I want to do it, but I always feel like I kind of want to see if I can actually go in through an interview process, get hired. And maybe that's my career for the next 10, 15 years. Cause it is very stressful being kind of, I guess, self employed or running
Yeah,
your own business,
I know.
and there's a lot of ups and downs to it. And there is some comfort to getting, that paycheck, and you're working and you're helping this organization continue to grow instead of the one paying people and they're all helping you grow it. And it's stressful. And it's just a very interesting time because you see people now, they're going on YouTube and they're making, $100
Yeah.
million a year just making videos. And you're like, oh man, like, is that something I could do? And there's always
Oh
this,
yeah.
yeah. And there's just this weird thing. And like, I love, video. I went to school for creative, like video and radio. And I've always loved it. And I always thought when I came out to LA, I wanted to be in the film industry. And I didn't realize how much the film industry was so much of a business that you couldn't really be creative until you got to a level or tried to fund your own film to be creative. And it made me not enjoy it. I was like, oh, I just want to like make films and be on set and do all this. And I actually ended up just doing photography because I got that creative outlet, got to be
Yes.
my own boss, and went with commercial shoots and helped people build up campaigns and kind of fulfilled that need I wanted instead of going down the route I thought I really wanted to go down. And it's just a crazy time because I don't think anybody in college gets you ready for the
Not
real
at all.
world sometimes.
No.
So,
No.
not at all, right? So what are some things that people, maybe they're younger, maybe they're in college now. What are some things that people can do to get ready for the real world? Because, I worked at Panera Bread when I was in college and like in high school
Yep.
and a pizza shop, and those are fun, but those aren't going to take you unless you're like, hey, I want to be VP of Panera Bread. I'm going to work at this and really grow my career this way. And some people do. But is there anything particular skill wise, I guess, that I could get ready? I'm about to have a kid in 2 months here. And
Exciting.
I always wonder, like, what are these skills that I wasn't taught that I wish I knew when I was in even high school, like doing your taxes. No one taught me how to do
Oh,
taxes.
Michael, we could talk for hours on this,
Yeah.
and I tell you, it's big. We're actually, so to answer the question on
Yeah.
what do you do, I'm very blessed to have two amazing sons. One is just turned 36,
Hmm.
and he went the traditional route after high school, went to college, back University of Wisconsin, and then surprisingly enough, he wanted to get out of Wisconsin and he went to Texas. He got into the oil and gas company and he is killing it. Like he
Cool.
set the goals. He's now a VP of a really great company. He loves it to a point
Sure.
because when I was at Christmas with him, we were talking and that was the one thing they would come to me over the years to ask advice, right? But not too much because mom
Yeah.
didn't know too much. They always thought she's good for someone else, but it's interesting now. And I just said, Trent, talk to me. Tell me, get it out of your head. Let's just go there. So that would be the first thing I would say to people is do a brain dump.
Yeah.
And that's with the worksheets that I have designed. I'll have to send you some and you
Yeah.
can share them with your audience and whatnot. But it's the gift you give yourself to quiet the mind and quiet that voice. What if, should I, woulda, coulda kind of thing. And then identify from there the things that you just absolutely are passionate about
Hmm.
from the pro con and what is relevant today, realistically, where you're at. Then I tell people to take another sheet and go deeper there, and then take another sheet. And literally, this happened to me 10 years ago. We had a coffee house in Santa Barbara, or excuse me, well, we had one in Santa Barbara, then we did one in Sausalito. And in 2008, when the crash hit,
Yeah.
and I was the CEO of the Sausalito Chamber and actually recruited that year 280 people
Wow.
for the company. They had never had anyone like me before, but I loved our initiatives and the projects we were working on. So, but we also lost our coffee house at the end of 2008. I was let go because the whole world was in a weird
Yeah.
way. And we literally overnight lost our homes, had cars repossessed. We lost everything, Michael,
Man.
materialistic. But then we had our little son who is 7, Jack. And I tell people today, I just wasn't attached to stuff. I looked at the bigger picture and knew now in hindsight that the universe wanted me to get back into search because
Hmm.
that's what my gift is. And so back to now my other son, Jack, who is a free spirit, grew up here in Marin, tree
Yeah.
hugger, loves everything outdoors. He would live
Hmm.
in a tree house if he could. He one of the top rowers in the country for Marin crew, went to the head of the Charles twice in the junior senior year. And if you haven't seen The Boys in the Boat yet, I tell everyone that movie will set you on fire to do and get clear on your goals.
What was it called?
The Boys in the Boat.
The Boys in
It's
the
out
Boat.
right
Okay.
now. George Clooney released it at Christmas. And
Oh, cool.
a rower, their mindset, when you think of 8 boys in a boat that have to be in sync, and there's over 2,500 techniques in that boat when they're rowing that have to work. And it's powerful. So why I share this, so our younger son ends up one of the top 80 rowers in the country. He gets Ivy League offers. He is just on fire.
Yeah.
And then he injures his back in senior year.
Oh
And
no.
doctors basically say, you continue, you're going to blow that disc. We don't know what's going to go sideways on you. So he goes,
Mm.
you know what? I know what I want to do. Now he comes from that generation. Now this was 6 years ago. He goes, I want to do health, fitness. I want to transform people, have them
Yeah.
get serious about their journey. And I'm like, oh my God, where did this come from? He's like this Buddha. Fast forward ahead, 6 years later, he has his own company.
Yeah.
He's killing it, but he got clear. And we sat him down that senior summer and he was working a couple jobs and had him do the worksheets. And we said, Jack, what's your heart telling you? And I don't want that to sound esoteric because we know deep down, and it is some of us like you are uplifters. When you do this podcast, and I've watched several, it brings people together. It brings them to have a community
Hmm.
that that gets them excited. You could go into an office and you could do that as well, but maybe not as effectively
Hmm.
as you do this way. So I always tell people it's a personal quest. And
Yeah.
yeah, and actually we have a exciting program coming out in June. I can hardly wait. And it's how to become the CEO of your life
Oh,
and
cool.
career. And it's been all the years of my work. And we have breath work in there. We have yoga. We're combining the mind, body, soul, spirit,
Yeah. I,
because yeah, that
I know
aligns.
I had somebody on recently that just made a book, and I'm always curious about the process because I'm interested in writing a book someday. I don't have anything I want to write right now, but I always thought, oh, this would be fun. What was the process like? Did you hire um, a ghostwriter or somebody there? Because I think my last guest, he did. He recorded himself and then they rewrote it together. And I thought that was a fun way of doing it because you didn't have to sit there and write or have a ghostwriter. How did you end up writing the book, and how hard was it? I mean, it's um, it's a process. I just could
It
only
is.
imagine the process.
Well, a couple good things. First, I'll touch on today
Yeah.
is a lot easier because of Chat GPT and AI. And
Yes. Yeah.
that's the first thing I tell young people or anybody I coach: embrace AI. Don't
Yeah.
be afraid of it. Get out ahead of it. Because if you don't, it is going to go right over you and you'll be in fear. And at my age, 60, I love it. I'm
Yeah.
finding so much fun with it. It's ridiculous. You could write a book in a month with Chat GPT. We've been
Yeah.
playing around with it. So, how it worked for me, I am very blessed. I happen to be married to an award-winning writer
Oh, there you
who,
go.
out of Los Angeles, he had a phenomenal career in marketing, advertising, PR, won over 50 awards while he was there with his campaigns. And so he's the one that would hear me in his office and he'd say, "Baby, you've got to write a book. Like the
Yeah.
way you do what you do is so different." And I thought, when do I have time to write a book? Kind of like what you said, it seemed overwhelming. So he actually put a binder together, sectioned off 12 topics that he would hear me talking about. And he said, when you feel like writing, just write. And then I'll edit and I'll fill in
Oh,
with results. And, he did the research big
that's
time.
great.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate. So we wrote it together. And we have a new one coming out here June 1st too, called A Mindful Workplace, because we've stayed on top of what's been going on in the workplace. And,
Yeah.
Michael, at the end of the day, I believe what's happened in the last few years for all of us is kind of a awakening, something that shook us to the core with COVID.
Hmm.
And then now I deal with the hybrid workplace. So I
Yeah.
have to educate my clients who are old school. We've got to meet people halfway today. You
Yeah.
know, um, my
How
both
are
my boys, yeah,
how are they responding to the hybrid workspace? Because I see all the news articles and everybody's
uh,
like, remote work is dead. Everybody back in the office, and you see it with a few companies. I think Apple and Facebook are like, okay, you got to come in the office. Snapchat's doing the same thing. Where are some of the executives now? Where's their mindset? Because it does
mm,
seem like once you got the taste of remote work, a lot of people didn't want to go back. It didn't seem
oh,
like a space. It's like, do I really want to commute, 2 hours a day to sit in
yeah,
my car and then work 8 hours? That's a crazy amount of time. And when you think about it, you're like, I can pretty much do it all right here. And you can do so
yes,
much now too. Like, we're recording this remotely. We've never met before, and it looks
yep,
great. It sounds great. And I get it because I'm sure they have a lot of money invested into their real estate. So it's like, we got to get you back because we have all this. But where's the vibe on your side so far with some of the executives?
Well, in a nutshell, it
Yeah.
is a situation, depends on the vertical I'm working in. So,
Okay.
um, one of our largest clients has been a global solar software hardware company where we've had 48 placements in 9 years. We built their entire team in Silicon Valley, um, and then did some international. They're on 7 continents, 110 countries. And um, he would love to see everyone back in the office. However, from a different mindset than most. He when I would go down there and, and it was pretty exciting to look out over the people
Yeah.
and realize that 90% were people I found and placed. I hand selected for those
That's
assignments.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it was powerful. And we helped them go public last May. So that was even rewarding. But I actually just talked to him last week on a Zoom because we were planning some strategies for this coming year and what's going on in that vertical. So in his vertical and in his space, I can respect, because we've owned companies, Michael. I've hired people, like you said, you've hired in your time. And when we had our coffee houses, that was something my husband always wanted to do. So I supported, like, okay, but it wasn't just any coffee house. It was that third place. And seriously, breathtaking places on the water, or, we found the best locations. We invested, we gave them insurance, we gave them, their food, we gave them a lot of support if they needed time off. We invested a lot in our people.
Yeah.
My clients that we secure, I have to align with their integrity and their values. They do the same. I'm serious. I've got the most incredible clients and they're all retained. So they secure us for critical hires. So he was telling me, I said, Zvi, how is it going right now? Are you getting the people back in? And he said, we have half in. And he said, but maybe we need for you to come down and do a seminar or a Zoom and tell them. He said, what I love seeing is when everybody gets together and they start talking about new ideas and collaborating.
Yeah.
He misses that. And he said that because they have this big, beautiful lunchroom where they cater in healthy food for the team. And he said, I miss the new ideas that would spark. So that is from that gentleman. And then our other big clients are in the commercial real estate and commercial building office space. Well, their vertical is quiet right now in San Francisco because so many companies pulled out of San Francisco because of remote. So you have a new dynamic there. He's more flexible where people have to drive farther into their office.
Yeah.
Although he just built the most breathtaking office that, like, I would want to work there because it has such good energy. But he understands that if they can be accountable and responsible, and we had actually placed their senior estimator 6 years ago, who's now the director of pre-construction. He's from Egypt. He can go to Egypt and work remotely when he goes over for like a month to see his family and his girlfriend. And so, but he's responsible. So I think the key thing, Michael, I would say takeaway when I interview people, especially during COVID, it was frustrating because so many were demanding. They were like, well, we know they need us and I want this, this, and this. And I'd be like, can you meet us halfway? Can you do 3 in-house and 2 remote? Because you and I know hiring people, you need to trust them. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it though.
Yeah,
today.
for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you, your book? And you currently have a book out right now, and then your new one's coming June 1st, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, anyone can find us on Wentworth Executive Recruiting.co, C-O. And I'm on LinkedIn,
Cool.
Carol Ann Wentworth. And people can follow us because we're putting out excellent content right on how to do your career search.
Great. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.